Hi, and welcome to today's Daily Chronicle. Today is Thursday, February 13th, 2025. White House blocks AP from event for using Gulf of Mexico. President Trump speaks to the press before signing a proclamation renaming the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America. Aboard Air Force One en route to New Orleans, Louisiana on February 9, 2025. The Associated Press says the White House blocked it from covering an official event on Tuesday because it did not refer to the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America. AP executive editor Julie Pace said that the White House informed the news agency that its journalists would be barred from attending President Trump's signing of a new executive order because it has not aligned its language with Trump's preferred name for the body of water. It is alarming that the Trump administration would punish AP for its independent journalism, Pace wrote in a statement posted on its website. Limiting our access to the Oval Office based on the content of AP's speech not severely impede the public's access to independent news. It plainly violates the First Amendment. The event was newsworthy. Trump and his advisor, billionaire Elon Musk, spoke at the sweeping cuts they were making to the federal government as part of Musk's government efficiency effort known as DOGE. Trump signed an executive order on his first day of renaming the Gulf in recognition of this flourishing economic resource and its critical importance to our nation's economy and its people, according to the order. The White House has not replied to NPR's request for comment. It comes as the Trump administration applies increasing pressure on mainstream news outlets through limiting access to key venues and launching investigations. AP's style book is used not only by its own journalists, but by other news outlets and institutions around the globe. In its guidance, the AP advises that the body of water to the east of Mexico that stretches from Texas to Florida should retain its historic title. The Gulf of Mexico has carried that name for more than 400 years. The updated stylebook entry states, refer to it by its original name while acknowledging the new name Trump has chosen. The U.S. Geological Service has officially adopted Gulf of America. Apple and Google Maps also call it by that name when searched by users based in the U.S. Outside the country, Gulf of Mexico is still used. As the AP stylebook notes, Trump's order only carries authority within the United States. Mexico, as well as other countries and international bodies, do not have to recognize the name change. As the AP stylebook notes, Trump's order only carries authority within the United States. Mexico, as well as other countries and international bodies, do not have to recognize the name change. Other news organizations offer support for the AP. The White House cannot dictate how news organizations report the news, nor should it penalize working journalists because it is unhappy with their editors' decisions. said Politico's Eugene Daniels, president of the White House Correspondents Association. The move of the administration to bar a reporter from the Associated Press from an official event open to news coverage today is unacceptable. The move is in keeping with others against the press. Under Defense Secretary and former Fox News host Pete Hegseth, the Pentagon has dislodged 8 news organizations from their work stations there, including NPR, The New York Times, NBC News, CNN, The Washington Post, Politico, The Hill, and The War Zone. 7 conservative and right-wing sites took their spots, including Breitbart Radio, One American News Network, Newsmax, and The New York Post. A liberal-leaning site that was also offered a workstation, HuffPost, had not asked for one. Trump had filed lawsuits against the ABC News and Facebook. Their parent companies settled his suits by paying millions of dollars apiece to his future presidential library. CBS's parent company, Paramount, appears poised to settle another lawsuit. Trump filed over a 60-minute interview with then Vice President Kamala Harris during last year's presidential race. According to several people with knowledge, they spoke on condition of anonymity, giving ongoing litigation. Legal observers say the strength of Trump's cases range from weak, ABC, to frivolous, Meta, and CBS. Trump's chief regulator over broadcast media, Federal Communications Commissioner Brendan Carr, has opened investigations to chairman and chief executive of Comcast, the parent company of NBC, over its diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts company-wide. Promoting invidious forms of discrimination cannot be squared with any reasonable interpretation of federal law, Carr wrote, according to Newsmax, which first reported his first letter Tuesday. The FTC did not reply to NPR's request for comment. In a statement shared with NPR, Comcast said it would respond to the FCC's questions and that its company has been built on a foundation of integrity, of respect for all employees and customers. An archaic origin of eukaryotes supports only 2 primary domains of life. The discovery of the archaea and the proposal of the 3 domains universal tree based on ribosomal RNA and core genes mainly involved in protein translation catalyzed new ideas for the cellular evolution and eukaryotic origins. However, accumulating evidence suggests that the 3-domain trees may be incorrect. Evolutionary trees made using newer methods place eukaryotic core genes within the archaea, supporting hypotheses in which an archaeon participated in eukaryotic origins by founding the host lineage for the mitochondrial endospermont. These results provide support for only 2 primary domains of life, archaea and bacteria, because eukaryotes arose through the partnership between them. Since their discovery by Carl Woese and his co-workers in 1977, the archaea have figured prominently in hypotheses of eukaryotic origins. Although similar to bacteria in terms of cell structure, molecular phylogenes for ribosomal RNA and a small core of genes that mainly have essential roles in protein translation suggested that the archaea were more closely related to the eukaryotic nuclear lineage. That is, to the host cell that acquired the mitochondria. The idea that the archaea and eukaryotes are more closely related to each other than either is bacteria depends on an analysis suggesting that the root of the tree should be placed on the bacterial stem or within the bacteria, implying that the prokaryotes cells that lack a nucleus are a paraphyletic group. The main question, how debated, is whether core components of the eukaryotic nuclear lineage descend from a common ancestor shared with archaea. As in the three domains trees, which is also often called the universal tree or the tree of life, or from within the archaea, as proposed to archaea host hypothesis for eukaryotic origins, the archaeal host scenario within the greatest phylogenetic support is the eocytes hypothesis, which proposes a sister group relationship between eukaryotes and eocytes, or one of the major archaeal divisions. However, the three domains eocyte debate remains controversial because of the phylogenetic methods have developed different results, often from the same data. This disagreement is due, at least in part, to the difficulties associated with resolving ancient divergences in phylogenetic trees. A major issue in reconstructing ancient relationships is the strength and quality of historical signal to remain after the millions of years since the divergence of archaea and eukaryotes. The earliest fossils identified as eukaryotic appear about 1.8 billion years ago. Over this enormous span of time, the accumulation of multiple substitutions in DNA and protein sequences might have erased any signal that would allow the relationship between archaeal and eukaryotic core genes to be established. However, more recent stimulations and empirical studies suggest that there are reasons to be cautiously optimistic that this is not the case. Functional constraints vary across real DNA and protein sequences. So that the site evolved at different rates. Fast evolving sites are indeed quickly saturated, but the slowest sites can still retain useful phylogenetic information, explaining why we are able to align some genes over the entire tree of life. Analysis of molecular sequences might therefore be able to distinguish between the alternative hypothesis for eukaryotic core gene origins, but the phylogenetic methods used and types of DNA analyzed are likely to be of critical importance in attempts to recover any historical signal. The problems associated with phylogenetic reconstruction come into particularly sharp focus when comparing support for the three domains and eocyte trees. The first studies to investigate this question generally recover the three domains trees, in which eukaryotes emerge as a sister group to archaea. But the parsimony tree, which eukaryotes emerge as the sister group of archaea, distance methods used to carry unrealistic assumptions, including constancy of base compositions across lineages and evolutionary rates across sites. These assumptions are clearly violated by key phylogenetic markers, such as small subunit ribosomal RNA genes, which contain mixture of fast and slowly evolving sites, and for which GC content varies widely among the three domains. Compositional heterogeneity can cause phylogenetic error when not taken into account, because sequences of similar base or amino acid composition may group together in a tree even when they are not closely related. Two pioneering studies use methods to mitigate possible convergence in the universal tree due to shared compositional biases in nucleotide sequences, and interestingly, both recovered an eocyte tree. Long branch attraction is another pervasive artifact in molecular phylologies, in which sequences with long branches cluster together irrespective of their evolutionary history. LBA is especially problematic for parsimony methods, but it can also affect probabilistic methods if the models ignores among site rate variation is otherwise a poor fit to the data. Trees for the rRNA and protein coding genes used to infer relationships between domains often show evidence of long branches and are there susceptible to LBA. Some of the early attempts to mitigate the influence of LBA in interdomain analysis also recovered eocyte trees. Although with variable support, evolutionary parsimony, a method designed to reduce the effect of long branches on the inferred tree, recovered an eocyte topology from rRNA sequences. Through archaeomonophyly was favored when a related method, compositional statistics, was used to analyze RNA polymerase sequences. By contrast, analysis of rRNA and RNA polymerase using models that accounted for among-site variation supported the eocyte hypothesis over the three-domain trees. To reconcile these results, Tourouse and Goy suggested that the three-domain trees might be phylogenetic artifact caused by LBA between the long bacterial and eukaryotic branches, forcing an artifactual clustering of the shorter archaeal branches. In other words, the eocyte tree might be intrinsically more difficult to recover using simple methods because it requires the clustering of the short branch leading to the eocytes with the long eukaryotic branch. Simple gene phylogenies often fail to strongly resolve the relationships between the domains, and so a number of studies have analyzed concatenations of the core set of proteins conserved by all genomes. As already described, these genes largely function in translation and often gene expression, and include many of the essential RNA and protein components of the ribosome. These cellular components have been called the genealogy-defining core, the genetic core of cells, or the functional core of genomes, and their common history has been cited as the strongest support for the three domains tree. Testing the evolutionary origins of this small set of genes is therefore critical to the three domains eocyte debate. Interestingly, analysis using similar sets of concatenated core genes have yielded different conclusions. For example, Cato obtained an eocyte tree from a set of 39 universal proteins, whereas Ciccarelli analyzed a similar set of proteins and obtained a three-domains tree. One reason for the conflicting results in this case may be the different methods used for making the sequence alignment. The order of the alignment had previously been shown to dictate which tree was recovered from elongation factor. Two sequences. Ciccarelli aligned bacterial, archaeal, and eukaryotic sequences separately before combining them into a single alignment. This stepwise procedure was criticized as potentially biased. The results toward a three-domain topology but also when individual alignments were combined to have introduced alignment errors between domains. Brown also inferred trees from concatenation of the subset of 14 universally conserved proteins. But in this study, the tree recovered depended on the phylogenetic method used. The three domains topology was recovered using the maximum parsimony, but model-based methods recovered an eocyte topology. Over the past few years, phylogenetic models implemented in either a maximum likelihood or a Bayesian framework have continued to increase in sophistication by incorporating additional features of the evolutionary process. These including relaxing the assumptions of homogeneous amino acids or base composition across sites or across branches of the tree. These models seem to fit molecular sequence data much better than simpler models, and this may make them less susceptible to LBA and other artifacts of model misspecification. Although relatively few analyses of the core gene have used these models so far, all of them have recovered the eocyte tree, rather than a three domains tree. New archaeal lineages and eukaryotic origins. In addition to improvements in phylogenetic methods, the diversity of molecular sequences from organisms related to the eocytes have also increased considerably, driven by the ease with which sequences from uncultured prokaryotes can now be sampled from the environment using molecular methods. Improved sampling can have positive effects of phylogenetic reconstruction, particularly when it helps to break long branches. Recently discovered relatives of the eocytes include the Gorgorotia and Thelmarkotia and Igokotia. The TAC superphylum was subsequently proposed as an informal group to encompass these four taxa. To date, the studies include TAC sequences have supported a version of the eocyte hypothesis extended to recognize this improved sampling rather than the three domains trees. In this extended sense, the eocyte hypothesis implies that the closest relative to the eukaryotic lineage is one or all of the TAC archaea. If this tree is correct, then an important place to look for prokaryotic homologs of eukaryotic cellular complementary should be among the TAC phyla. Consistent with this prediction, members of this group encodes homologous of a number of key eukaryotic genes, including actin and tubulin, a ubiquitin protein modification system, and a number of genes involved in transcription and translation. However, no signal characterized TAC genome possesses all of these features, implying that gene loss and potentially horizontal gene transfer have contributed to the patterns of gene sharing on contemporary archaeal and eukaryotic genomes. Judge declines to block Trump administration's resignation offer to federal employees. A protester holds a fork during a rally against billionaire Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency on February 7th in Washington, D.C. The fork is a reference to the deferred resignation program for federal employees that was communicated through an email with the subject line, "Fork in the Road." After issuing 2 stays, U.S. District Judge George O'Toole has declined to block the Trump administration's deferred resignation program for federal employees. The ruling comes more than 2 weeks after the U.S. Office of Personnel Management, OPM, sent an email to more than 2 million civilian employees of the federal government with the subject line, "Fork in the Road." The email presented government workers with a choice. They could resign now in exchange for pay and benefits through the end of September, or they could remain in their positions with the caveat that their jobs are not guaranteed. Moreover, those who stayed would face significant reforms, including layoffs, a return to working in the office full-time, and an expectation that they be loyal, the email said. The local group, Democracy Forward, filed a lawsuit on February 4th on behalf of the labor unions representing more than 80,000 civil servants, alleging that the Trump administration's resignation offer is unlawful, as well as arbitrary and capricious in numerous respects. In his ruling, O'Toole wrote that the labor unions, lack standing to challenge the fork directive because they are not directly impacted by it. Instead, they allege that the directive subjects them to upstream effects, including the diversion of resources to answer members' questions about the directive, a potential loss of membership, and a possible reputational harm. O'Toole wrote in his decision, "This is not sufficient." O'Toole also stated that the court lacks subject matter jurisdiction. Federal employees, he noted, are supposed to take their workplace complaints to the independent agencies set up to review personnel matters within the government. Yet on Tuesday, attorneys for the unions asked O'Toole to consider that President Trump ousted the chair of the Federal Labor Relations Authority and a member of the Merit Systems Protection Board, two forums where claims brought by civil servants are reviewed. These terminations have now fundamentally weakened these entities and undermined their bipartisan composition, further impairing any purported opportunity for meaningful judicial review. These terminations have now fundamentally weakened these entities and undermined their bipartisan composition, further impairing any purported opportunity for meaningful judicial review, the attorneys wrote. O'Toole did not rule on the legality of the deferred resignation program. In a statement, Everett Kelly, a president of the American Federation of Government Employees, one of the plaintiffs, called the decision a setback, but not the end of the fight. We continue to maintain it is illegal to force American citizens who have dedicated their careers to public service to make a decision in a few short days without adequate information about whether to uproot their families and leave their careers for what amounts to be an unfunded IOU from Elon Musk, he wrote. Wednesday's ruling dissolves O'Toole's stay on the fork deadline. In a statement, OPM spokesperson McLaurin Pinover said the agency was pleased that the court had rejected a desperate effort to strike down the deferred resignation program. As of 7 p.m. tonight, the program is now closed, she wrote Wednesday evening. This program was carefully designed, thoroughly vetted, and provides generous benefits so federal workers can plan for their futures. More than 65,000 federal employees, roughly 3% of the federal workforce, have agreed to resign as of Tuesday morning, according to the spokesperson at OPM. Earlier this week, Trump said he was confident that his administration would prevail. "I got elected on making government better, more efficient, smaller, and that's what we're doing. I think it was a very generous buyout, actually," he said, speaking in the Oval Office.